This week we're going to start learning about fragments, and fragments are a complicated topic, and so we're going to spend 2 weeks on fragments. This week we're going to look at a simpler example, and then next week we're going to have a lab that involves a more complicated example. So what is a fragment? Well, I'm going to go all the way back to the Simple Calculator program from Lab 2. This is the Ohm's Law calculator, and I'm just going to go ahead and run this. And so I have an interface with an action bar, and I'm going to go ahead and enter 120 volts and 10 ohms and hit calculate. And when I hit calculate, it switches to a second activity. So an activity is like a window in Android speak. And this is an app that has two separate activities, an input activity and an output activity. And the input activity launches the output activity using an intent and also passes information to the output activity on the intent. But what if we don't want to have two activities for this app? What if we want to actually change the content of one activity? So I want to just have one activity, which is my Ohm's Law calculator, and when I enter the data here and hit calculate, instead of going to a new activity, I want to change this part of the interface to have my output stuff in it. So this is a little different from what I have now, because in this version of the program, each activity has a static layout file, and the layout says what the user interface elements are on this page. But what I want is a little more dynamic than that. I want to actually be able to change what elements, what widgets and text views and so on are displaying in the layout. And that's what fragments let you do. So a fragment is a little chunk of user interface, including the layout for that little chunk and any code that you need to make the chunk work. That's sort of self-contained into a Java class. And then you can add your fragment to an activity. So the activity layout for this activity is basically going to have something called a frame. And it's just like a frame in a web browser where you can have a separate page displayed. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a fragment that I plug into that frame. And then when I want to change the user interface that's being displayed in the frame, I can do that in code. So I can switch from one fragment to another fragment. So in the old version of the program, I have two activities, an input activity and an output activity. In the new version of the program, I'm just going to have one activity that has a frame, and I'm going to have two fragments, an input fragment and an output fragment, and my program is going to switch which fragment is currently displayed in the frame. Now that might seem like a lot of work for not much benefit, but we'll see later on that there's some additional things that you can do with fragments that sort of pay off all the additional work.